In the space of about 2 weeks this summer, English football tore itself apart at the very top. Pep Guardiola, the most dominant manager the Premier League has ever seen, walked away from Manchester City after 10 years and 6 titles. Liverpool sacked Arne Slot, the man who'd only just replaced Jurgen Klopp 2 years earlier. Chelsea handed their entire project to Xabi Alonso. Manchester United built on a managerial revival already underway under Mikel Carrick. 4 of England's biggest clubs, 4 fresh starts, all within days of each other. Reporters covering it called it the biggest period of managerial change England's top flight has seen in over a decade. And in the middle of all that upheaval, one club did almost nothing. Arsenal, the reigning Premier League champions, 22 years in the making, kept their manager, kept their core, and kept building quietly while everyone else pressed the reset button. On paper, that sounds like the safest possible position to defend a title from, but football history says otherwise. Because staying still while your biggest rivals reinvent themselves has broken more champions than it's protected. This is the complete story of Arsenal's title defense. The 22 years it took to get here, what they built this summer, exactly what they're up against at every single rival, and why we didn't need to change might be the most dangerous sentence in the Premier League this season. To understand what winning this title actually meant to Arsenal, you have to understand how long the wait was. 2004, the Invincibles. Arsène Wenger's side going an entire league season unbeaten, a feat that remains one of the most romanticized achievements in the sport's history. That was Arsenal's last Premier League title before this one, 22 years. An entire generation of supporters who had never seen their club crowned champions of England. In between, there were near misses that hurt in their own specific ways, runners-up finishes, talented squads that fell just short, a period under Wenger where 4th place started to feel like a trophy in its own right, followed by genuinely difficult years of managerial instability as the club searched for an identity to replace his. Mikel Arteta's appointment in December of 2019 didn't look, at the time, like the start of a dynasty. He inherited a club that had drifted out of the Champions League picture entirely, a squad short on confidence and direction. His first trophy, an FA Cup in that opening partial season, was a start rather than a statement. What followed was years of patient, sometimes painful rebuilding. A process that included going toe-to-toe with his own former mentor, Pep Guardiola, and finishing runner-up in the league in back-to-back seasons, close enough to taste it, still not quite there. That context matters enormously for what comes next, because it means last season's title wasn't a surprise smash and grab. It was the culmination of years of infrastructure, recruitment, and tactical development finally converging at once. When Arsenal finally got over the line in 2025 to 2026, their 4th Premier League title, their 14th English top-flight title overall, it was widely described as a title race that went down to the very last matches against Manchester City themselves. Arteta had beaten the man who taught him. But the season didn't end there, and it didn't end cleanly. Arsenal also reached their first Champions League final in decades, genuine, historic continental success within reach for the first time in a generation. And they lost it, on penalties, to Paris Saint-Germain, a brutal, agonizing way for an otherwise historic year to end. 2 trophies within touching distance, one secured after 22 years of waiting, one lost in the cruelest possible fashion football has to offer. That combination, real triumph sitting right next to real heartbreak, is the emotional starting point for absolutely everything Arsenal do this season. Every title-winning club faces the same fundamental question once the celebrations end: how do you improve on winning? Spend recklessly and risk destabilizing what worked? Stand completely still and risk falling behind clubs desperate to catch up? Arsenal's answer this summer was neither extreme. It was something closer to surgical precision. The clearest signal of the club's intent came before a single transfer was completed. Mikel Arteta signed a new contract running through 2027, closing off any speculation about his future at exactly the moment other clubs were tearing up their own management structures. The message from the boardroom was unmistakable. This is our man. This is our identity. We are building around him for years, not months. Behind the scenes, the club also brought in a new sporting director, Andrea Berta, previously at Atletico Madrid for well over a decade, taking over Arsenal's recruitment strategy from EDU. Berta's reputation is built on efficient, value-driven recruitment rather than marquee name splashing. A philosophical fit for a club that had just proven its existing model works and had no interest in abandoning it for the sake of making noise. So how do you actually strengthen a squad that just won the league without disrupting what made it work? Carefully and specifically. Not a wholesale rebuild, not a handful of statement panic buys. Targeted reinforcement in exactly the areas the club identified as needing depth or an upgrade, while trusting the spine that had just delivered a trophy to keep doing what it does. That's exactly what the summer's transfer business ended up looking like. And the details of it tell you a great deal about how Arsenal actually think about defending a title. The headline incoming deal of Arsenal's summer was Bruno Guimarães, the Brazilian midfielder signed from Newcastle United for a reported £75 million, comfortably one of the biggest fees of the entire Premier League summer, and a deal that answers a very specific question every title-winning side eventually has to ask itself: how do we control games even more completely than we already do? Guimarães arrives with a reputation as one of the league's most dynamic, ball-winning central midfielders, someone capable of both breaking up opposition attacks and driving Arsenal's own play forward from deep. Slotting him alongside players who were central to last season's triumph doesn't just add a name to the squad list, it adds another layer of control to a midfield that was already one of the league's best. Piero Hincapie's loan move from Bayer Leverkusen was made permanent for around £34.5 million. This isn't a gamble on an unknown quantity. Hincapie made 39 appearances in his debut campaign at the club, starting 7 Champions League matches including, painfully, the final itself. Making his move permanent is less a new signing in spirit and more a confirmation of what the club had already learned. This is a player who belongs in the squad long-term, not a lone experiment that needs revisiting. Christos Solis arrived from Club Brugge for around £34 million, a 22-goal forward in his last campaign in Belgium, bringing attacking depth and proven end product to a forward line that will need every ounce of squad rotation available, given how packed this season's calendar already is. Ilan Meslier joined on a free transfer from relegated Leeds United, rounding out a now 3-deep goalkeeping department behind first-choice David Raya. Insurance, not a statement, but exactly the kind of unglamorous depth building that separates clubs built to sustain success from clubs built to chase a single good season. Going the other way, Leandro Trossard left for Turkish side Beşiktaş in a deal worth around £15 million, and reports throughout the summer suggested up to 8 players in total could depart before the window shuts. Squad players and fringe names being moved on to keep the group sharp, competitive, and financially sustainable, rather than allowed to swell into an oversized, unmanageable roster. Step back and look at the shape of that business as a whole. No panic. No club spending £300 million trying to paper over a bad season, because there wasn't a bad season to paper over. No wholesale changes to a spine that had just delivered a trophy. Arsenal added precisely where they identified genuine need, kept what worked, trusted continuity, and quietly tidied up the fringes of the squad. It's the kind of summer that looks completely reasonable and unremarkable in early August, and will look either brilliant or dangerously complacent by next May, depending entirely on what happens everywhere else in the league. And what's happening everywhere else in the league is where this story turns genuinely dramatic. Start with the club Arsenal spent years chasing before finally overtaking them. Pep Guardiola's 10 years at Manchester City delivered 6 Premier League titles and fundamentally redefined what tactical dominance looks like in English football. A level of sustained excellence the league had never seen before, and, arguably, may never see again from a single manager. When he stepped away this summer, City weren't just losing a coach. They were losing the single most influential footballing mind of the last decade, along with every ounce of institutional knowledge that comes with a decade in charge of one project. His successor is Enzo Maresca, arriving at the Etihad after his own management experience elsewhere in the Premier League. The scale of the job in front of him is almost impossible to overstate. A Guardiola squad isn't just talented. It's built entirely around one extremely specific, extremely demanding tactical philosophy. Positional play down to precise zones on the pitch. Defenders functioning as auxiliary midfielders. Attacking patterns rehearsed to a level of detail most clubs never approach. Whether that exact squad translates smoothly to a different manager's ideas, or requires a genuine philosophical rebuild to suit someone new, is one of the single biggest questions hanging over the entire Premier League this season. For Arsenal specifically, City's transition is a direct, immediate opportunity, the club they spent years measuring themselves against. The club whose sustained excellence made every Arsenal near miss sting that much more, enters this season with genuine uncertainty at its core for the first time in a decade. That's not a guarantee Arsenal will capitalize, but it's an opening that simply didn't exist 12 months ago. If Manchester City's story this summer is about replacing greatness, Liverpool's is about repairing a genuine crisis in real time. Arne Slot arrived at Anfield in 2024 to replace Jurgen Klopp, an almost impossibly difficult brief on its own. And after a rocky second season, saw Liverpool slip all the way down to 5th place, a full 25 points behind champions Arsenal. The club made the call that 2 years wasn't going to be enough time to fix it. Slot was let go. What makes this particularly striking is the scale of investment that had already gone into trying to make Slot's Liverpool work. Reports throughout the season pointed to hundreds of millions spent on new signings, with pundits publicly and repeatedly questioning whether that spending had actually improved the team in any measurable way. A club with that level of financial commitment behind a project doesn't sack a manager after 2 years lightly, which tells you exactly how serious the internal alarm bells inside Anfield had become by the end of last season. The man now tasked with fixing it is Andoni Iraola, arriving after 3 genuinely outstanding seasons, transforming Bournemouth from relegation candidates into a side that qualified for European football for the first time in the club's entire history. Iraola's reputation is built on relentless organization, high-intensity pressing, and consistently getting more out of a squad than its individual parts would suggest on paper, which is either exactly the medicine a bloated, underperforming Liverpool squad needs, or an enormous, possibly overwhelming step up in pressure, media scrutiny, and expectation from a considerably smaller budget and a much lower stakes environment at Bournemouth. For Arsenal, Liverpool represent a genuinely different kind of opportunity than Manchester City do. This isn't a champion in tactical transition. This is a wounded giant trying to remember who they are. Historically, those situations can resolve in either direction. A genuine crisis club sometimes needs an entire season or more to stabilize, or a change of manager unlocks talent that had simply been misused, producing an unexpectedly fast turnaround. Arsenal can't assume which version of Liverpool they'll be facing until results start coming in. Chelsea's summer brought its own major managerial appointment, with Xabi Alonso taking over after building a strong reputation elsewhere in European football. Chelsea have cycled through ideas, philosophies, and personnel relentlessly over recent seasons, and Alonso's task extends well beyond simply winning matches. It's about finally giving the club a clear, consistent identity that survives longer than a single transfer window's worth of patience. Whether his specific methods translate cleanly to the physical, relentless pace of the Premier League is the open question hanging over Stamford Bridge as the season begins. Manchester United's situation carries a genuinely different shape, because their revival was already underway before this season even started. Michael Carrick, a club legend as a player, took charge partway through last season and led what multiple analysts specifically described as a stunning turnaround, dragging United back into European contention after what had looked like a lost campaign entirely. This season represents Carrick's first full campaign in permanent charge from the very first whistle, which means United, unlike City, Liverpool, and Chelsea, actually enter this season with genuine momentum and continuity behind their manager, rather than a completely blank slate to build from scratch. For Arsenal, both clubs represent mid-table to top 6 uncertainty, rather than direct title threats in the immediate term. But both are exactly the kind of clubs capable of taking points off the genuine contenders on a good day, adding another layer of unpredictability to a season that's already carrying more of it than usual. Stack all 4 of those rival stories together, and the temptation is to end this documentary with a simple, comfortable conclusion: Arsenal are calm and settled, everyone else is in chaos, the title defense is essentially secured before a ball is kicked. But football rarely rewards the obvious read, and there are real, specific reasons this season is genuinely uncertain for Arteta's side, regardless of how stable their rivals look by comparison. First, There's a psychological question mark that doesn't show up in any transfer column or squad list in unpredictable ways. Sometimes it hardens a group, sharpens their edge, gives them something to specifically correct. Sometimes it lingers as hesitation in exactly the moments that matter most. A flinch nobody can quite coach out of a player until it happens again, and either resolves itself or doesn't. Second, analysts covering the league heading into this season have specifically flagged a tactical challenge that's easy to overlook from the outside: winning a title as the pursuer, grinding out results with resilience, seizing moments of brilliance, playing every big match as the side with nothing to lose is a completely different discipline from winning as the establishment, expected by everyone to dominate and dictate from the front every single week. Arsenal spent years as the team chasing Manchester City, building their identity around closing a gap. Now they're the team everyone else is chasing, and that shift in psychology, for players and manager alike, has broken title defenses across football history more often than people remember. Third, and this cuts directly against the comfortable advantage Arsenal narrative, instability at rival clubs doesn't automatically mean weakness on the pitch. New managers often bring a genuine bounce in the opening months. Fresh ideas players haven't grown stale on. A clean slate free of the previous regime's baggage. Players desperate to impress a new boss and secure their place before the new pecking order solidifies. Nobody outside those four dressing rooms actually knows yet whether Maresca's City, Iraola's Liverpool, Alonso's Chelsea, or Carrick's United will start the season slowly while they find their feet, or start fast on the back of genuine enthusiasm for a new project. Football history offers real examples of both outcomes, sometimes from the exact same manager in different jobs. Fourth, there's the calendar itself to consider. This season starts a week later than usual, specifically because of World Cup recovery time. And Arsenal, as reigning champions with a squad full of internationals, likely had more players deep into that tournament than most of their rivals. That's a subtle but real fatigue factor, working against the very continuity that's supposed to be their biggest advantage. Being the same team you were last season only helps if that team is actually fresh enough to perform at the same level. So the honest picture isn't simply Arsenal are safe. It's more precise than that. Arsenal enter this season with the calmest, most settled platform of any of England's traditional giants, built on genuine continuity, smart and targeted recruitment, and a manager the club has fully committed to for years to come. But calm platforms have to be proven on the actual pitch, against opponents nobody can fully predict yet, carrying a squad that's still processing the most painful 90 minutes of its recent history, into a calendar that offers no real mercy to anyone. So here's exactly where the season actually begins, and what to watch for as it does. This Sunday, August the 16th, Arsenal face Manchester City in the Community Shield in Cardiff, not their usual Wembley stage, moved this year to make way for a concert. And it's the very first genuine competitive data point of the Enzo Maresca era against the champions themselves, in a fixture that carries far more symbolic weight than a traditional curtain raiser usually does. Then, Friday, August the 21st, the season proper kicks off with Arsenal hosting newly promoted Coventry City at the Emirates, live on Friday Night Football. Frank Lampard's remarkable Coventry side walking straight into the toughest possible opening assignment English football could hand them. The transfer window slams shut on the 1st of September, and whatever business remains unfinished across the entire league, for Arsenal and for every one of their rivals, will get resolved in a frantic final week that could reshape squads just as the season is already underway. Every one of those moments is going to start answering the question this documentary has raised, but genuinely can't settle yet. Is Arsenal's continuity actually the advantage it looks like on paper? Or are they about to learn that standing still while the ground shifts violently around you is its own particular kind of risk? We'll be covering every twist of it in full. The Community Shield result, the opening weekend, every major transfer that lands before deadline day, and the tactical questions Mikel Arteta has to answer as the hunted for the first time in over 2 decades. If you want to follow this title race properly, from a channel that's going to track it the way we track the World Cup all summer, every controversy, every twist, every piece of context nobody else bothers to dig into, subscribe now. Based on the summer we've just had, this might genuinely be the most unpredictable Premier League season in years, and Arsenal The calmest team in the middle of it still have absolutely everything left to prove. See you for the Community Shield.